700,000 scrolls, the accumulated wisdom of every civilization on Earth. Gone, erased from existence. And here's what no one tells you. We don't actually know who destroyed it, but we know who lied about it. And why they lied. That's the real story. This is Cluster Story, where we take a deep dive into history to get a great understanding of how we got here. If you made it this far, hit the subscribe button, turn on the bell, like, and share this video. Imagine for a moment that every book, every document, every piece of recorded knowledge from the ancient world was gathered in one place. Mathematics that wouldn't be rediscovered for 1,000 years. Star maps that charted galaxies we're only now beginning to understand. Medical techniques so advanced they seemed like magic. Philosophy that questioned the very nature of reality itself. This wasn't fantasy. This was Alexandria. And someone destroyed it all. The burning of the Library of Alexandria is often called humanity's greatest intellectual catastrophe. Scholars have wept over it. Historians have raged against it. And for over 2,000 years, people have pointed fingers at everyone from Roman generals to Christian mobs to Muslim conquerors. But here's the truth that will change everything you thought you knew. The Library of Alexandria wasn't destroyed in a single dramatic fire. Its death was far more tragic, far more preventable, and far more human than any legend would have you believe. To understand what really happened, we need to go back to the beginning. Back to when one man had a dream so audacious, so impossibly ambitious, that it would change the course of human civilization forever. The year was 323 BCE. Alexander the Great lay dying in Babylon. He was 32 years old and had conquered more of the known world than any human being in history. His generals gathered around his deathbed, asking the question that would tear an empire apart. Who inherits everything?
To the strongest.
What followed was decades of brutal warfare as his generals carved up his conquests. But one of them, a clever Macedonian named Ptolemy, made a decision that would echo through eternity. He didn't fight for the whole empire. He took Egypt. And in Egypt, Ptolemy would build something that would outlast every battlefield victory, every conquered territory, every monument to military might. He would build a library. But why? Why would a battle-hardened general, surrounded by enemies, invest his precious resources into collecting scrolls? The answer reveals the genius of Ptolemy's vision. He understood something that many rulers before and after him failed to grasp. True power isn't held in swords. It's held in knowledge. Whoever controls knowledge controls the future. Ptolemy established his capital in Alexandria, the city Alexander himself had founded on the Mediterranean coast of Egypt. And there, he began constructing what would become known as the Mausoleum, a temple dedicated to the Muses, the goddesses of arts and sciences. But this was no ordinary temple. This was the world's first true research university. Ptolemy invited the greatest minds of the Greek world to come to Alexandria. He offered them something irresistible: funding, housing, resources, and most importantly, access to the greatest collection of scrolls ever assembled. The library grew with astonishing speed. Ptolemy and his successors were ruthless in their acquisition of knowledge. Ships arriving in Alexandria's harbor were searched, and any scrolls found on board were confiscated. The originals were kept in the library, and copies were returned to their owners. Think about that for a moment. The Ptolemaic rulers were so obsessed with knowledge that they essentially created an ancient form of intellectual piracy. They borrowed the official state copies of the great Greek tragedies from Athens, promising to return them. They never did. They kept the originals and sent back copies, forfeiting an enormous deposit of silver. To them, knowledge was worth more than gold. At its height, the Library of Alexandria was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Estimates suggest it contained between 400,000 and 700,000 scrolls. Each scroll represented not just a book, but often an entire lifetime of thought, observation, and discovery. The library wasn't a single building. It was a complex of structures, gardens, and lecture halls surrounding the Great Mausoleum. Scholars lived there, supported by royal funds, free to pursue their research without the burden of earning a living. And the minds that gathered there changed everything. Euclid walked these halls, developing the geometric principles that would guide architects and engineers for millennia. His Elements remained the definitive mathematics textbook for over 2,000 years. Eratosthenes stood in the library's shadow and calculated the circumference of the Earth. Using nothing but sticks, shadows, and pure mathematical reasoning, he came within 50 miles of the actual measurement. This was in the 3rd century BCE, over 1,700 years before Columbus sailed west. Aristarchus proposed that the Earth revolved around the sun. 17 centuries before Copernicus, a scholar in Alexandria understood our place in the cosmos. Herophilos conducted the first systematic studies of human anatomy, performing dissections and documenting the nervous system, the brain, and the distinction between arteries and veins. Hero of Alexandria invented the first steam engine, the Aeolipile. 2,000 years before the Industrial Revolution, the technology existed. It was treated as a curiosity, a toy. Imagine if it had been taken seriously. The library didn't just preserve Greek knowledge, it translated and collected wisdom from across the known world. Egyptian medical texts, Babylonian astronomical records, Persian histories, Jewish scriptures. The Hebrew Bible was translated into Greek at Alexandria, creating the Septuagint that would later form the foundation of the Christian Old Testament. This was the first truly global repository of human knowledge. A place where the wisdom of every civilization could meet, combine, and create something entirely new. And it was all about to become a target. The year was 48 BCE. Julius Caesar had pursued his rival Pompey across the Mediterranean to Egypt. Pompey was dead, murdered by the Egyptians hoping to curry favor with the victor. But Caesar stayed. He had become entangled in a civil war between the young pharaoh Ptolemy III and his sister Cleopatra. Caesar chose Cleopatra's side, and when Ptolemy's forces surrounded him in Alexandria's harbor, Caesar made a desperate decision that would echo through history. He set fire to the Egyptian fleet. The flames spread. Ancient sources tell us that fire reached the docks, the warehouses, and the storage buildings near the harbor. Scrolls stored in these buildings burned. For centuries, this moment was blamed for the library's destruction. Caesar, the great Roman conqueror, reducing humanity's greatest treasure to ashes in a moment of military necessity. But here's what the legend leaves out. The main library wasn't at the harbor. It was located inland, within the palace complex. What burned were warehouses containing scrolls awaiting export, books being prepared for shipment throughout the Mediterranean. This was a devastating loss, certainly. Perhaps 40,000 scrolls were destroyed, but the library itself, the great collection within the Mausoleum, survived. We know this because scholars continued to work at Alexandria for centuries after Caesar. The geographer Strabo visited the Mausoleum in 20 BCE, more than 2 decades after Caesar's fire, and described it as a thriving institution. So if Caesar didn't destroy the library, who did? Fast forward 400 years, the Roman Empire had transformed. Christianity, once a persecuted sect, had become the official religion of the state. And in Alexandria, religious tensions were reaching a breaking point. The year was 391 CE. The Christian patriarch of Alexandria, Theophilus, had received permission from the Emperor Theodosius to destroy pagan temples. And in Alexandria, one temple in particular drew his attention: the Serapeum. The Serapeum was the temple of Serapis, a god created by the Ptolemies to unite Greek and Egyptian religious traditions. It was one of the most magnificent buildings in Alexandria, and by the 4th century, it had become the home of a daughter library, a secondary collection that contained copies of works from the Great Library. Christian mobs, led or encouraged by Theophilus, stormed the Serapeum. They tore down the temple. They destroyed the statues. And the books inside? The historical record is agonizingly unclear. Some sources suggest the scrolls were destroyed in the chaos. Others imply they were scattered, taken, or simply lost in the violence. The great pagan scholar Ammianus Marcellinus, writing around this time, speaks of the library's collections in the past tense as something that once existed. For many, this is the true destruction of Alexandria's knowledge. Not a single fire, but a systematic religious purge. The triumph of faith over reason. The moment when Christianity chose doctrine over discovery. But even this narrative is too simple. Because by 391 CE, the original Library of Alexandria, the great Mausion founded by Ptolemy, had already been declining for centuries. The Roman emperors had gradually reduced funding. Scholars had dispersed to other cities. The collection had been neglected, stolen from, and allowed to decay. The Serapeum Library was a shadow of what Alexandria had once possessed, a satellite branch that survived because the main institution had already faded. So if the Christians destroyed what remained, they weren't burning a living library. They were desecrating a tomb. The year was 642 CE. The Arab armies of the Rashidun Caliphate, led by the general Amr ibn al-As, had conquered Egypt. Alexandria fell to the Muslims. And then, according to one of history's most persistent legends, Caliph Umar the Furer was asked what to do with the books in Alexandria's library. His response has become infamous. If those books contain what agrees with the Quran, we have no need of them. If they contain what disagrees with the Quran, they must be destroyed. According to this story, the scrolls of Alexandria were used as fuel for the city's bathhouses. There were so many books, the legend claims, that they kept the baths heated for 6 months. It's a powerful story. It fits neatly into narratives of religious intolerance and cultural destruction. For centuries, it was accepted as fact. There's just one problem. It's almost certainly false. This account first appears in the writings of Bar Hebraeus, a Christian scholar writing over 500 years after the alleged event. No earlier sources, Arab or otherwise, mention it. No contemporary accounts describe any books remaining in Alexandria to be destroyed. Modern historians have thoroughly debunked this legend. It appears to be anti-Muslim propaganda, created centuries later to blame Islamic conquests for the loss of classical knowledge. By 642 CE, there was simply nothing left to burn. So if Caesar didn't destroy it, and the Christians didn't destroy it, and the Muslims didn't destroy it, what actually happened to the Library of Alexandria? The answer is both more mundane and more tragic than any dramatic conflagration. The Library of Alexandria died slowly. It was killed by budget cuts, political instability, and intellectual migration. The Ptolemaic dynasty that founded the library fell in 30 BCE when Cleopatra died, and Egypt became a Roman province. The Romans initially maintained the library, but their priorities lay elsewhere. Funding gradually decreased. In 145 BCE, Ptolemy VIII expelled foreign scholars from Alexandria during a period of internal conflict. Many never returned. The intellectual community that had made the library great began to scatter. As Rome declined, so did Alexandria's importance. Other cities rose as centers of learning. Constantinople, the new capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, drew scholars and books away from Egypt. Fires, both accidental and intentional, claimed portions of the collection over the centuries. The Caesar fire in 48 BCE, possible destruction during Aurelian's campaign to reclaim Egypt in 270 CE, the violence at the Serapeum in 391 CE. But between these dramatic moments, a quieter destruction was occurring. Scrolls made from papyrus are fragile. They decay. They crumble. They require constant copying to survive. As the library's funding dried up, as its scholars departed, as political chaos disrupted its operations, scrolls simply rotted. Books that weren't copied were lost. Knowledge that wasn't maintained disappeared. This is the real tragedy of Alexandria. Not a single villain, not a single catastrophe, but centuries of neglect. Death by 1,000 cuts. We will never know exactly what perished with Alexandria's scrolls, but we can glimpse shadows of what might have been. The complete works of Aristotle were said to fill hundreds of scrolls. We possess perhaps a third of them. The rest? Gone. The Greek playwright Sophocles wrote over 120 plays. 7 survive. Aeschylus wrote between 70 and 90 plays. We have 7. Euripides wrote over 90 plays. 18 remain. The complete histories of ancient civilizations, medical texts that describe treatments we're only now rediscovering, mathematical theorems we've had to derive again from first principles, astronomical observations that took centuries to replicate. Some scholars speculate that the ancients understood more than we give them credit for. The Antikythera mechanism, a complex astronomical computer from the 1st century BCE, suggests technological sophistication that shouldn't have been possible. What if Alexandria held the manuals, the context, the accumulated knowledge that could have launched a technological revolution 2,000 years early? We will never know. And that unknowing, that forever unanswerable question of what might have been, that is the true legacy of Alexandria's loss. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of this story isn't what happened. It's why we've spent 2,000 years arguing about it. Every civilization that has been blamed for Alexandria's destruction has been blamed for a reason. And those reasons tell us more about the accusers than the accused. When Christian Europe blamed the Muslims, it was convenient. It deflected from the role Christians themselves played in the suppression of pagan learning. It painted Islam as the enemy of knowledge at a time when Islamic scholars were actually preserving and expanding upon Greek philosophy. When later scholars blamed the Christians, it fit Enlightenment narratives about religious superstition opposing scientific progress. It made faith the enemy of reason in a clear, simple morality tale. When Rome blamed Caesar, it served political purposes. It was safer to attribute the loss to one man's military accident than to acknowledge Rome's systematic neglect of Hellenistic learning. The Library of Alexandria has become a mirror. In its flames, we see whatever we want to see, whatever serves our purposes, whatever confirms our prejudices about who the villains of history really are. And in doing so, we miss the real lesson. The Library of Alexandria wasn't destroyed by any one enemy. It was destroyed by everyone, and by no one. It was destroyed by rulers who valued power over knowledge, by budget cuts that seemed reasonable at the time, by scholars who left for better opportunities elsewhere, by scribes who weren't hired to copy deteriorating scrolls, by soldiers who didn't mean to burn what they burned, by time itself. The lesson of Alexandria isn't that evil people destroy knowledge. It's that ordinary people, making ordinary decisions, can let extraordinary things die. Knowledge requires constant investment. It demands copying, teaching, funding, and protection. It needs people who believe it matters. And when that belief fades, when other priorities take precedence, the accumulated wisdom of millennia can simply crumble to dust. We like to imagine dramatic villains, tyrants ordering books burned, mobs storming libraries with torches. It gives us someone to blame, someone to hate, but the truth is more unsettling. Libraries die when we stop caring, when we decide that knowledge is a luxury we can't afford, when we trust that someone else will preserve what matters. And yet, the story doesn't end in ashes. Because here's what the pessimists forget. Not everything was lost. Some scrolls survived, some knowledge persisted. The works of Plato and Aristotle, of Homer and Herodotus, traveled to Constantinople, to Baghdad, to the monasteries of Europe. Islamic scholars in the House of Wisdom translated Greek texts and added their own discoveries. Medieval monks copied ancient manuscripts by candlelight. And slowly, painstakingly, piece by piece, humanity rebuilt. The Renaissance was, in part, the recovery of what Alexandria had gathered. When scholars rediscovered Euclid, when they read Ptolemy's astronomy, when they encountered the philosophy of the ancients, they stood on the shoulders of those Alexandrian giants. Today, we have something the Ptolemies could never have imagined. We have the internet. We have digital archives. We have the ability to store the entirety of human knowledge in devices that fit in our pockets. The dream of Alexandria, the dream of gathering all human knowledge in one place, is closer to reality now than at any point in history. But the lesson of Alexandria remains. Digital archives can be deleted, servers can fail, funding can be cut, institutions can decline. The vulnerability that killed Alexandria hasn't disappeared. It's just taken new forms. The Library of Alexandria burned. Not once, but many times. Not dramatically, but slowly. Not by any single villain, but by the accumulated choices of centuries. And in its burning, it left us a warning. Knowledge is not permanent. Wisdom is not immortal. The accumulated learning of civilizations can vanish in fire, in flood, in war, or in simple, quiet neglect. Every generation inherits the accumulated wisdom of those who came before, and every generation must choose. Will we preserve it? Will we add to it? Or will we let it slip away, assuming someone else will do the work? The scholars of Alexandria are gone. Their names are mostly forgotten, but their dream survives. The dream of understanding, the dream of preserving, the dream of passing knowledge from generation to generation, each adding to the flame. That flame has never gone out. It cannot go out. Because as long as there are humans who wonder, who question, who seek to understand the universe and their place in it, Alexandria lives on. Not in buildings, not in scrolls, but in us. The Library of Alexandria was destroyed, and yet it endures. In every book written, in every discovery made, in every question asked by a curious mind. Perhaps that is its final, greatest secret. Some flames cannot be extinguished. And that is the real story behind the Library of Alexandria's destruction. Not the legend, not the myth, but the truth about how knowledge lives, how it dies, and how it refuses to stay dead. If this story moved you, if it made you think differently about knowledge and its preservation, share it. Because the lesson of Alexandria is too important to remain buried. Subscribe to Cluster Story for more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world. Hit that bell so you never miss when we uncover the truth behind history's greatest mysteries. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, keep the flame alive.